Did you know that iron is the most widely distributed mineral on the planet? In the planet? In real terms, good old Mother Earth is pretty much built out of iron, which is so compelling to me because iron is what can be turned into steel, and steel is what can be turned into tools and implements, and you can forge steel and make tools and modify tools. So I got a question in the comment section. Can you talk about heat treating so if we bend a screwdriver or twist a crowbar or adjust a wrench, we can reestablish the characteristics of the steel that existed before we modified it? Let me show you what I know about heat treating and why the answer to that question is probably more complicated than you're thinking. Check out how springy this hay rake tooth is. Perfectly springy. Let's see what happens when I put it in the fire and modify it a little bit. All right, it's hot, well past critical temperature. Now, I don't know what that alloy is, but I do know what's going to happen next. Remember how springy this thing was? Presto. Fully hard, like a piece of glass. Remembering the hay rake tooth, let's talk about a tool modification. This is an old wrench. It doesn't even have the size on it anymore. I don't know who made it, and so I don't know what the alloy is, but I'm assuming it's a high carbon steel. Let's also assume I need a 45-degree bend on that open end. We're getting up close to critical temperature, which is a dull red, medium red. I don't want to go too far past that. Let's bend that. We're not going to quench that. We're just going to let that air slack right there in the air, okay? Actually, I'm going to set it down here because I'm going to do something different with an Allen wrench. We're going to set that right over here in these ashes. It's going to cool slowly. Not real slowly, but slowly. Now let's just say that I want a 45-degree bend in the bottom of that Allen wrench. Once again, I don't know what that alloy is. I assume it's a high carbon steel. I don't know, maybe it's 4140 medium carbon, but let's just assume that it's got lots of carbon in there and see what happens. I'm going to bend this and quench it. Neutral flame, doesn't really matter. We're going to put a short bend on this, get it a little hotter than that other bend. As that steel warms up, those iron molecules start vibrating faster and faster. And when they finally can't give up all their heat through vibration, they start to emit light. And then you begin to see your progress. That's a medium orange. That's undoubtedly critical temperature, which is non-magnetic. Let's see what happens. Now, I don't know what that alloy is, and it didn't turn very gray. Let's see if that's as hard as that rake was. No, that didn't get that hard. So there's an example of an alloy that can be modified and quenched, and you can get it back to where you're using it. That's pretty good. Different than the rake. Mystery metal, right? Let's see how that wrench is at this point. That's pretty soft. That's softer at that bend. Let's see how soft it is. Center punch, little hammer. Let's see if the center punch will punch back up here where I didn't get it hot. Very little mark. Let's see what it does right out here. Can you hear the difference? Right in the bend, the center punch dug right in. Up here, very little. So that is very much softer than this is. Now, if you wanted to get this whole thing back to the degree of hardness and ductility that you have up here, you would have to get the whole thing up to the right temperature and quench it in the right medium in order to get a uniform characteristic. It's just not worth it. At this point, all you have to decide is that strong enough to resist whatever effort I'm going to put on the handle? Because there is, practically speaking, no way to recreate the characteristics of the steel that existed before right here, right now. Let's talk about why. Now, these Allen wrenches are made by different people, different times, different metals. I have no idea whether this is the same stuff as this. But earlier, I flattened the end of that out. Let's just say we want to hang that on a keychain or something. And I put it in lime. Ashes will work, vermiculite will work, anything that slows down the cool. Let's see if that is softer. Oh yeah, that's soft. Let's see if I can drill that. I bet I can. Yeah, look at that. Let's drill a hole in there just to illustrate how a slow cool from critical temperature can anneal, or at least normalize, a piece of carbon steel. Oh yeah, soft, dead soft. You remember our spring? This is where it broke off. See how the grain is kind of coarse? It should be as smooth as velvet. That's because I held it at a pretty high temperature for a while. I'm going to polish this and show you how a guy could go around tempering that back to where it probably is not near as brittle. So you remember that this is hard, right? We're going to see if we can use heat to make it softer, springier again. Got to be careful knocking it around because it's still hard and it could break some more. Okay, we begin to get a little bit of color, almost too much. Okay, that's a decent blue back there. Oh, we've got a crack clear up here from when I quenched it. Wow. All right, we're going to let that cool slowly. See, there was a crack clear back up here, probably from when I quenched that in the water, which means that's hard also. I think I've softened this down here. I'm going to brush this a little bit and soften it clear back up here, but I don't know if that crack is apparent, but that's how hard it got just by putting it in the water. Let me brighten that up. So the conclusion is for the conversation about modifying tools, that if you don't know what the alloy is, and you can't really control the temperatures of hardening and tempering, you're just shooting in the dark. For instance, I think that these two old tools are pretty simple alloys. Maybe a 5160, maybe a 4140, I don't know. But this one I forged and then put it in the lime to cool slowly, and it is soft. It is dead soft, the way you would expect a simple medium or high carbon alloy to behave. Same with this. It bent. It didn't want to bend, but it definitely softened, as evidenced by the effect of the center punch, and it still is strong. It's not going to crack. It may bend, but boy, you're going to turn on it hard to do that. This thing, I have no idea what that alloy is, but it is not a simple carbon steel. I would guess an S7 or something, because it bent hard even though it was hot. It didn't seem to care that it was put in water for a second, and it remained so strong that I couldn't physically get it to straighten or crack or anything. I think that bend is as sound as that one was. So, unknown, but examples of different characteristics, right? This thing, here in a few minutes, we're going to see if I was able to temper that back. What I'm talking about are the tempering colors, which is the way that we learned to control the hardening and tempering or making useful of steel. So in our academy, Essential Craftsman Academy, we've got a blacksmithing course in there. It includes the tempering colors, the forging colors. It's handy. This is very subjective and approximate. I mean, these colors fade from light, faint straw yellow, which is probably down around 350, getting up towards a full straw. I think I should have shifted this temperature continuum up a little bit. Full straw to bronze, to peacock, to royal blue, to light blue. This corresponds to softening. It's amazing. It's the way that we learned to use this new magic metal of steel. Here are some examples that I did in my kitchen. I don't know, 2 weeks ago now, I began to think about this video. And we've got a very faint straw yellow there that happened around 3:30, understanding that the oven may not have been accurate. We got a bronze that happened up around 4¼ 400. The peacock happened around 500, and the royal blue happened around 550, 575, which is really maxing out my wife's oven. I mean, there's a better representation. But these colors are something that captivate me. Has anyone ever thought about how unlikely it would be that iron combining with oxygen at 350 and 4¼ and 500 and 550 would reflect different portions of the spectrum of light? We take these things for granted. It's just a reality of creation in a blacksmith shop or in a metallurgy shop. But let's roll back the calendar to that time in the distant past when either there was a big bang explosion or an act of creation, and suddenly the laws of physics sprang into existence. Have you heard of fine-tuning of the universe? Have you thought about that at that cataclysmic moment that we are taught happened, all of the laws of physics sprang into reality, including gravitation, including electromagnetism, nuclear strong force, and nuclear weak force, which are the 4 foundational forces. If they were not exactly as they are, matter itself wouldn't exist. Galaxies couldn't have coalesced. And they have to be accurate to 6 or 7 decimal places, and they are. Okay, theoretical. Push it aside. But now think of this, the tempering colors. The possible range of temperatures ranges from 0 degrees Kelvin, that's about 450 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit. That's where molecules come to a stop. Can't get any colder than that. To, let's say the surface of the sun is max theoretical heat, but it's not. Things get hotter, but it's around 9,930 degrees, Google tells me, 10,000 degrees. So that's about a 10,400 degree temperature span. And in the range of temperatures from 300 to 650, iron tempers. It changes, it softens, steel becomes useful. Cool, change the subject, right? Except in those same temperatures, it reflects a different portion of the spectrum so we can see it. And if it was a big bang, our retinas hadn't evolved yet. So steel and iron behave in such a way that people with brains and opposable thumbs and these particular eyeballs can temper. You're not just guessing at what's going on inside that mystery zone of steel, carbon, and iron and alloys. You're not guessing. You can monitor it with color. And we didn't exist yet when that became unavoidable because of the laws of physics, because of the range of color, because of the way that oxygen combines with iron, because, and here we are. So I don't know about you, but here in this blacksmith shop where we do the roughest kind of work, we also work at the molecular level in hardening and tempering. I'm thankful to do it. And I don't know how one has enough faith to think that this happened by chance as a serendipitous outcome of total chaos. I don't know how you think that. And if you do, God bless you anyway. But for me, the tempering colors, as evidence right here, right now, are one little part of the fingerprint of God. Thanks for watching Essential Craftsman, and keep up the good work.